The warning ignored. The galaxy had many voices and most of them spoke with pride. Great empires ruled across the stars, their fleets stretching for light years, their armies feared in every system. Among those voices, Earth was always quiet. To the great council of alien powers, humans were only a small species, living on a single blue planet not worth notice. But some remembered. Some had seen what humans could do when pushed to the edge. Hidden reports traveled through secret channels. Traders told stories of alien raiders who had attacked human colonies but never returned. Mercenaries spoke of small skirmishes where human ships fought with strange tactics, winning against stronger forces. Most of these stories were dismissed as lies or exaggerations. The powerful empires laughed. They said humans were nothing, a backwater race with no place in the Council of Stars. The warnings came as simple messages, sent out from human space. They were not decorated or full of flowery words. They were sharp and cold. Do not cross into human space. You will not return. The words repeated again and again, broadcasted in every tongue across every channel. When the council first heard these words, they laughed. Admirals shook their heads. Governors smiled with arrogance. They said, "How can such a weak race dare to give orders to us? They do not know what true power is. They do not know war." And so, they ignored the warning. The coalition fleet was formed quickly. It was not one empire alone, but many who wanted to teach Earth a lesson. They wanted to remind humans of their place. The fleet was massive, stretching across the void like a storm of steel and fire. Carriers, destroyers, dreadnoughts, all gathered under the banners of arrogance. Their commanders felt no fear. They believed the mission would be easy, fast, and glorious. In the war rooms of alien capitals, leaders spoke with pride. "We will crush them. We will take their colonies. We will silence their arrogance forever." None of them stopped to think why the humans had spoken so boldly. None of them asked why a small world dared to speak to giants with such cold certainty. The day of the invasion came. Alien ships moved across the border into human space. Their engines burned bright against the darkness. Crews inside laughed and celebrated. To them it was like a parade, a display of power. They expected human ships to scatter in fear, to send desperate pleas for mercy. But space was silent. No human ships came forward. No colonies cried out. The emptiness of human space felt strange, too quiet, as if something hidden was watching. Still, the commanders pressed forward, convinced of victory. A young alien officer looked out into the stars from the bridge of his cruiser. He saw beacons floating in the distance, glowing red in the dark. The signal repeated, "You were warned." His hands trembled, but when he told his captain, the older officer only laughed. "Fear is for children. This is only human trickery. Soon we will see their weakness." The fleets spread deeper into human territory. Their sensors scanned the void. Nothing. No colonies. No resistance. It felt almost too easy. But still, the warnings echoed in every transmission. Then came the first shadow. A human ship appeared on their scanners for a second and vanished. It was large, armored, but silent. Alien captains shouted orders. Weapons locked on targets that were no longer there. The humans seemed to melt into the darkness, invisible and cold. In the command centers of the coalition, admirals began to argue. Some wanted to slow down. Some wanted to study the area first. But the proud leaders silenced them. "We cannot turn back. We must move forward. Earth will bow before us." Yet deep inside, fear had begun to grow. Crews whispered of strange human ships moving like ghosts. Some spoke of their comrades' vessels breaking apart with no sound, no warning, only light. Stories spread faster than orders. The arrogance of the fleet began to shake, but the commanders refused to see it. The warning still glowed across every channel. "Do not cross into human space. You will not return." At the edge of the Sol system, the alien armadas gathered. Thousands of ships pointed their weapons at the human home star. They believed the final strike would come soon, that Earth would burn and its people would kneel. But far in the shadows, Unseen eyes watched. Human warships were already waiting, hidden among asteroid fields, cloaked by silence and steel. Their weapons were charged. Their captains spoke no words of mercy. They remembered every insult, every laugh, every dismissal. The moment of truth had come. The aliens thought they were hunters. But in the darkness they were already prey, and Earth's warning had never been a bluff. The first strike, the alien armadas entered deeper into human space with pride still strong in their hearts. They filled the stars with their numbers. From every angle the sky burned with engines and weapons. To them it was a grand display, the greatest fleet ever sent against a single world. Commanders boasted to one another. Admirals smiled in confidence, but not all felt so certain. Soldiers on the smaller ships whispered to each other. Why had the humans been so calm? Why had they not pleaded for mercy? Why did their warnings sound so cold and final? The silence around them felt heavier with every passing hour. Then the moment came. It began as a flicker on their sensors. A single blip appeared at the edge of the fleet. The nearest destroyers moved to intercept, their weapons armed. But before a single shot could be fired, the blip became light. A beam of energy cut across the void like a blade. The destroyer never had the chance to scream. It was gone in seconds, ripped apart and scattered into fire and dust. The fleet froze in disbelief. Their captains shouted questions, demanding answers, but the humans had already vanished again into the dark. From another angle, 3 more ships appeared, sleek, sharp-edged, built for war. They did not speak. They did not warn. They opened fire with precision that felt almost inhuman. Alien battleships shook under the assault. Shields collapsed. Armor cracked. Whole crews burned before alarms could sound. The first screams echoed across the communication channels. Panic began to rise. Alien commanders rushed to form their defenses. Orders filled the air, shouted with anger and fear. Ships moved into tight formations. Fighters launched in swarms, covering the larger vessels. They thought strength in numbers would protect them. But they were wrong. From the shadows of an asteroid belt, a massive human dreadnought revealed itself. Its hull glowed with blue energy. Its cannons rotated, locking onto targets with mechanical calm. And then it fired. The blast tore through the center of the alien fleet. Cruisers scattered like broken toys. Fighters tried to shield their capital ships, but they were shredded by railgun fire, their debris floating silently into the void. The admiral of the coalition, proud and certain only hours before, now stared at the chaos with disbelief. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Hold the line, do not fall back, they are only humans." But his words carried no power. The fleet was already breaking. The first strike was not just an attack, it was a message. Every shot was placed with care. Every explosion reminded the aliens of the warning they had ignored. Humans had been watching. Humans had been waiting. And now, their fury was unleashed. A smaller alien commander tried to rally his forces. He ordered a charge toward the human dreadnought. Hundreds of ships moved together, their weapons blazing. For a moment, it seemed the humans might be overwhelmed. But then, as if the void itself had betrayed them, more human ships appeared. Not 1 or 2, but dozens. Hidden in silence, cloaked in darkness, they surrounded the attackers like wolves. The charge became a slaughter. Alien ships exploded one after another. Their formation shattered. The screams of officers filled the comms until static drowned them out. And still, the humans spoke no words. Not one captain, not one soldier taunted or mocked. Only the warning remained, pulsing through the void. You were told not to enter. Now you will not return. The aliens began to realize the truth. Humans had prepared for this moment. Every trap was set long before the fleet crossed the border. Their paths had been predicted. Their arrogance had been counted on. They had walked into a battlefield already written in human hands. The admiral of the coalition slammed his fists against the console. He shouted at his officers, his voice broken with rage. "We are stronger. We are many. Do not fear these ghosts." But when he turned to his display, he saw the truth he could not deny. The proud armada that had entered human space with laughter was now burning. The stars were lit with fire. Ships broke apart like glass. Once great banners of alien empires drifted as ashes across the void. And the first strike was not over. It had only begun. In the command rooms of Earth, human leaders watched with cold eyes. They gave no cheers. They spoke no words of triumph. For them, this was not glory. This was justice. The coalition had mocked their warning. Now the price was being collected. As the battle spread, alien soldiers began to whisper a new truth among themselves. It was not Earth that was weak. It was they who were blind. They had walked into a storm, and the storm had no mercy. The first strike shattered their pride. The next would shatter their survival. The trap revealed. The battlefield was chaos, but beneath the chaos was design. The aliens thought they were facing sudden attacks, random strikes born of desperation. But every move, every blast, every human ship that appeared was part of something larger. Something the coalition had never imagined. At first, alien commanders believed they could recover. They pulled their fleets into tight defensive lines. They spread fighters wide to catch any hidden human vessels. They thought they had regained control. But then the trap unfolded. From behind them, where they believed their supply ships were safe, came silence. The convoys carrying fuel, weapons, and food vanished from their scanners. No distress calls, no signals, only silence. Hours later, debris fields floated into view, proof that the humans had already struck. The coalition realized with horror that their supply chain was gone. Then came the communications collapse. Alien ships sent orders, but the messages never reached their fleets. Signals were jammed, scrambled into meaningless static. Admirals screamed into their channels, but their voices were swallowed by silence. Only one message remained clear, pulsing over and over. You were warned. Fear spread like fire. Crews whispered of human ships moving in ways that defied sense. Scouts swore they saw human frigates vanish into the shadows, reappearing where no path existed. Some spoke of new weapons, beams that tore through shields as if they were paper. Others said the humans had learned their codes, that every command they sent was already known by their enemy. The truth was even worse. Humans had studied them for years. Their fleets, their formations, their weaknesses, all had been mapped. Every tactic the aliens used was one the humans had already planned against. The coalition was not fighting a battle. They were walking through a script written by Earth. On the flagship of the coalition, the Supreme Admiral stared at the battle maps. Dots representing his proud armadas were disappearing one after another. His officers begged him to retreat, but he shook his head with stubborn pride. If we run now, we admit defeat. We cannot let a primitive race shame us. His voice was strong, but his eyes betrayed his fear. The humans tightened the trap. In one sector, an alien fleet attempted to break free, racing toward the border. They thought they had found a gap in the lines. But as they advanced, the stars around them flickered with sudden light. Dozens of mines hidden among drifting rocks detonated. The fleet was torn apart before it even realized the danger. Survivors screamed into the void, but no help came. Another fleet tried to regroup near a moon, hoping to use its surface as cover. But as they descended into orbit, the moon itself lit up. Human bases had been hidden beneath the surface, their cannons rising like giants from the soil. Beams of white-hot energy struck the alien ships, tearing them apart from below. What had seemed like shelter became their grave. Still, the humans gave no speeches. They did not mock their enemies. They did not demand surrender. They only struck, with precision and silence. Their cold efficiency was more terrifying than any threat. Among the aliens, panic grew into despair. Pilots abandoned their formations. Crews fled their stations. Some ships even turned on their allies, desperate to escape through any path, even if it meant betrayal. The great coalition that once entered human space as one force was now crumbling into chaos. On Earth, commanders observed it all. They had expected this. Human intelligence networks had long prepared for the arrogance of the Council. They knew one day the empires would test them, And so every minefield, every hidden base, every ambush had been built for this single purpose. In the war room, a human general finally spoke after hours of silence. His voice was cold. "The trap is working. Hold the net. Do not let them leave." And his words carried across every human ship, a calm command in the middle of storm. Back in the void, the aliens realized the truth too late. They had not invaded human space. They had marched willingly into a prison. Every door was locked. Every path was watched, and the only escape was death. The Coalition admiral lowered his head in silence. Pride had blinded him. Arrogance had led them here. And now, his fleets were burning one by one. The trap had closed, and the humans had only just begun to show their fury. The fury of Earth. The Coalition fleets had entered human space with songs of pride. Now the songs were gone, replaced by screams that bled through broken channels. Ships drifted as wrecks. Engines burned without control. Survivors called for help that never came. But the battle was not finished. It was only now that the fury of Earth truly revealed itself. From the darkness of the void, more human warships emerged. They were not small escorts or fragile patrols, but massive vessels built for one purpose: war. Their hulls glowed faint, blue under the light of distant stars. Their guns tracked with silent precision. The air itself seemed to shake as they came into view. Alien soldiers stared at the human ships with disbelief. They had thought humans were primitive, incapable of building fleets of such scale. Yet here they were, dreadnoughts larger than cities, carriers releasing swarms of fighters like steel storms, destroyers cutting through the dark with engines that roared like thunder. And when they attacked, it was with no hesitation. Railguns lit the void with fire. Energy beams carved through the alien formations like knives through glass. Missiles streaked across space in perfect arcs, detonating in blinding waves. Every shot landed where it was meant to land, every blast breaking the will of those who stood against them. The Coalition tried to fight back. Admirals shouted orders, commanding their fleets to regroup, to resist, to hold the line. But their words were drowned by fear. Ships hesitated. Crews refused to advance. Entire squadrons turned away from battle, desperate to flee. But there was no escape. The humans had sealed every path. And still, not a single human voice mocked them. There was no laughter, no speeches, only cold silence. That silence was worse than any words, for it carried the weight of judgment. An alien captain on a battered cruiser sent a final plea across the void. "We surrender. Spare us." But his message was met with nothing. Seconds later, his ship was reduced to a burning shell. The humans had made their answer clear. There would be no mercy. In the command halls of Earth, leaders watched the destruction with faces carved in stone. They did not celebrate. They did not cheer. For them, this was not a victory to enjoy. It was a punishment to deliver. The Coalition had mocked their warnings. Now they paid the price in fire. Across the battlefield, human fighters hunted like wolves. They moved in packs, striking larger vessels with perfect coordination. Alien dreadnoughts that once inspired fear crumbled under their assault, breaking apart into pieces that drifted silently into the void. One alien admiral tried to rally his remaining ships for a desperate last stand. He raised his banner high and ordered a charge into the center of the human fleet. For a brief moment it seemed brave, but as they advanced, they were met with an overwhelming storm. Human dreadnoughts turned their full firepower upon them. The charge lasted less than a minute. What was left of his proud force became nothing more than glowing fragments. The fury of Earth was not wild chaos. It was sharp, precise, calculated. Every move was planned. Every strike was chosen. The humans fought like executioners, each attack another swing of the blade. In the aftermath of every explosion, alien survivors floated in silence, their escape pods drifting among wreckage. Some cried, some prayed, some could only stare at the burning ruins of their fleets. They had come believing they would conquer. Instead, they had awakened a force they did not understand. The Coalition's numbers shrank with every passing hour. Ships that once filled the sky became ashes scattered across the stars. Hope, once unshakable, turned to despair. Even the most loyal soldiers now whispered words they dared not speak aloud. We should never have come here. And deep within the heart of the battlefield, the human fleet pressed forward with steady force, not for glory, not for conquest, but for justice. The warning had been given. It had been mocked. Now the judgment was final. When the last alien flagship erupted in fire, the shockwave rippled across the void. It was not just the end of a ship, it was the end of arrogance. The coalition had believed Earth was weak. They had believed humans were prey. Now their armadas were dust, and their names would be remembered only in shame. The humans did not stop to gather trophies. They did not raise banners of triumph. They left the wreckage behind, silent and cold, a message carved into the stars themselves. Those who cross into human space will not return. And still, the fury of Earth was not done. For the survivors who fled would carry the story back to the galaxy. And once the truth spread, no one would ever look at Earth the same way again. The broken armadas. The war was over, but the silence that followed was heavier than the battle itself. Where once thousands of alien ships had filled the stars with their fire, now only wreckage drifted. Great dreadnoughts, once symbols of power, lay broken and scattered like shattered monuments. The proud banners of empires floated as burning scraps across the void. The coalition fleets that had crossed into human space no longer existed. What remained were fragments. Damaged ships limping through the dark. Escape pods carrying terrified. Survivors' whispers carried on broken channels. The arrogant voices that had once promised conquest were gone, replaced by fear and regret. Among the survivors there was no unity. Captains argued, soldiers wept. Officers cursed their leaders for leading them into the storm. Some prayed to forgotten gods. Others cursed the name of humanity. But all of them shared one truth. They would never forget the fury they had seen. On one crippled battleship, a young alien officer looked at the wreckage outside his window. He remembered the words that had echoed again and again. Do not enter human space. You will not return. Now those words were carved into his heart. He whispered them to himself, knowing he would carry them home as a warning that no empire could ignore. Across the galaxy, news traveled fast. Merchant convoys carried whispers of the disaster. Refugees told stories of the impossible battle. Secret transmissions leaked into council halls. Everywhere, the same message spread. Earth had destroyed the greatest fleet ever assembled. Humanity had taken the pride of the galaxy and ground it into dust. At first, many leaders refused to believe. They said it was exaggeration, a trick of survivors too broken to see the truth. But as more and more fragments of evidence arrived, wreckage recovered from deep space, transmissions of dying ships, survivors scarred by terror, the truth could not be denied. The galaxy trembled. In alien courts, rulers asked the same question. How could humans, a young species with so little standing, hold such strength? How could they destroy an armada that no other empire could hope to face? Fear crept into every council meeting, every war room, every palace. If humanity could do this to the coalition, what could they do to others? Some argued for peace. We must never provoke them again, they said. Let them keep their space, let them live as they wish. Others whispered of vengeance, but their words carried no weight. No one wanted to test Earth again, not after the broken armadas. On Earth, there was no celebration. Cities did not roar with victory, and no parades filled the streets. Instead, the people moved quietly, returning to their lives. For them, the battle was never about glory. It was about survival, about respect. They had sent their warning, and when it was ignored, they had answered. That was enough. But in the command halls, the human leaders spoke in low voices. They knew what the galaxy now saw. Humanity had revealed its strength, and strength brought fear. Fear brought attention. Earth would no longer be ignored, but neither would it be safe from eyes that watched with envy. Even so, the message was clear, carved into the memory of every survivor. every wreck, every whisper across the stars. Those who enter human space will not return. In time, the story became legend. In distant bars on alien worlds, old soldiers spoke of the night the coalition armadas burned. Merchants told their crews to avoid the human border at all costs. Children of other species grew up hearing the tale of the warning that had been mocked and the fury that had answered. And in the deep silence of space, where wreckage still drifted, the stars carried the memory. Broken hulls of alien pride floated as monuments to arrogance, silent graves that no one dared approach. The coalition had thought itself mighty. They had thought themselves untouchable. But Earth had taught them the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak, and those who forgot that truth would pay the price. The broken armadas were proof enough.